What's up, fellow Age Groupies? Welcome to another episode of Age Groupies Podcast, part of the United WeCast Network. I am Mike Ergo, and along with my co-host Lindsay Hiken, we're here to talk to you about all things related to endurance sports from an amateur athlete perspective. We talk about how to have fun along the way and make the sport a little less intimidating. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have any questions, comments, topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Today's guest is Melissa Urie, a.k.a. Ranga Mel. Mel was a guest for us on episode 46 back in October when she told us all about racing the Epic 5 in Hawaii. But today, we get to hear about how Mel was the first woman in history to finish Uberman. Uberman is no joke. Its website describes it as the world's most challenging ultra triathlon. The 556-mile course goes from the mists of Avalon to the snows of Mount Whitney. Starting on Catalina Island, participants swim 21 miles in the open Pacific Ocean to the shores of Palos Verdes. The 400-mile bike route leaves the city of Los Angeles and climbs 20,000 vertical feet before descending to Badwater Basin. At 200 feet below sea level, the lowest point in North America, from Badwater, athletes run 135 miles through Death Valley before ascending 13,000 feet to the trailhead at Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the continental United States. Yeah, talk about epic. This is it. Anyways, you guys are going to love the episode, so sit back and enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to Age Groupies, and here we have the return of Ranga Mel, who has been on her world podcast tour talking about Uberman, and we're going to get into that and get into how does one go to train for such an epic long race that is beyond the comprehension of most people. Even people who have completed multiple Ironmans like myself still can't imagine, what you've done. So let's get into it. Mel, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me back. It's really nice to be here.
Oh, yeah. I was so excited following you on Uberman and so excited to see, I guess you'd call it your social media crew.
Yeah.
Updating us and everything. And
yeah.
God, that was so fun to watch. So
they were amazing. They're amazing. So what I did is I had a phone with a SIM card that had an American number. So it had data, and I just handed it to them before the start and I said, do what you want, film what you want. I have no control. Just update whatever you want. And everyone has been telling me that. They're like, it was so good. We got so much content. We could follow you along. We knew what was happening. And there was only bits when there was a bit of a blackout spot generally on the run that they're like, where is it? What's going on? What's happening? But yeah, they were amazing.
Yeah, because that's some things that people don't think about on these self-supported races. You got the bigger races, marathons and Ironman, there's that tracker app. So you don't really have to worry about getting updates of the progress of an athlete, but this was cool. So Before we get too far into it, for those who don't know what Uberman is, can you break down the distances?
Yes. So it's a 34-kilometer swim. It's a 640-kilometer bike ride and a 214-kilometer run. Yes. So very far.
That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the ultra distance is nothing that you're not a stranger to that. Mm. You've done multiple Ultraman races.
Yeah.
And so this was farther, but it wasn't beyond comprehension for you.
No. So I kind of looked at all the distances and the swim intimidated me. So I went and did a 20K swim the start of 2018, and that kind of reassured me of, okay, I can get through 20Ks non-wetsuit. I'll be able to get through 34 with a wetsuit on. And then I looked at the bike and the run distances, and it's roughly 5 times an Ironman on both of those legs. And I thought about it. I was like, well, I've done Epic 5, and that is 5 Ironmans in 5 days. So I've done the distances, but it wasn't all at once. So in that way, I kind of looked at it and went, well, I've done that. So it actually is possible to do. So that's the way I kind of looked at it and went, no, that is possible to do it.
Right. You said, okay, mentally you went through the checklist and you're like, okay, I've done these distances. Just not in the same order, I guess, or not this way. So, wow, what were going into it? What were you most worried about? You've done the distances, but what were the points of concern of things that could go wrong?
The main one for me is always my bike, making sure that nothing breaks. I don't have significant mechanicals that are going to like physically stop me from continuing on, because I know mentally for me, if I start something, I'm finishing it. And the only way that I'm not going to be able to finish that is some kind of significant mechanical or, crash, get hit by a car or, something pretty bad. I mean, I spoke to my sports doctor beforehand and he goes, all right, so I'll give you some pain medication because I know if you fall off and break your arm, you're still going to continue. And I was like, well, yeah, of course I will. So he's like, well, I'll load you up beforehand so then you'll be able to get going. But I took 2 bikes over for that particular reason. So I came over and did the 70.3 Super Frog where I met you and I had my TT bike there. And then my husband came over a couple of weeks after I had gone over and he brought my road bike. So I had the 2 bikes to, if one of them died, like cracked frame, something significant, then I still had the other bike to use. And I had one flat tire the whole time. That was the only issue I had with my bikes. And I just swapped bikes at that time. So that was the other way that we could kind of deal with that. And I guess for me, it's always the run. I've never run that far before. I did a 100-kilometer race this year because I was like, well, I want to see what it's like running longer distance. I thought about doing 100 miles, but then I kind of thought, well, the recovery time for that's probably going to be too long to then be able to get some more good quality training in. So I decided against that.
That is the trick there.
Yeah. It's not just doing an event. It's doing that as a lead into something else. And then how long is it going to take me to recover from that? Because as it was with the 100K race, it was a couple of weeks before I was feeling okay again to, keep doing some decent training. So yeah, I hadn't ever run, double what I'd done. So I was like, okay, well, don't really know how to do this, but I'll just make it up as I go along.
Do you have any injuries or get sick or any setbacks along the way?
No. The main physical issues that I had was in the swim, I had some tape on my neck to stop the wetsuit from rubbing. And I took that after about 10 Ks because I had it all munched up and it wasn't doing anything after that point. So I had like 24 Ks of just wetsuit on skin, tearing it to pieces. So that was pretty nasty. And then the other couple of things I had was on the swim as well. I got some ulcers on the side of my tongue from the salt water because I had some mouthwash, but I wasn't using it as often as I should have been. So that was a bit of a mistake. And that prevented me from...
What's the trick to that? So you're supposed to use mouthwash to get out the extra salt?
Yeah. So I spoke to some marathon swimmer friends because I basically just went, who are the experts in these disciplines? I'll talk to my marathon swimmer friends. I'll talk to my ultra cyclist friends. I'll talk to my ultra runner friends. Like, I was just outsourcing all of the information that I potentially wouldn't know about from not going over super, super long distance over multiple days, like in this format. So they were saying that you get some alcohol-based mouthwash or like coconut oil. So I ended up using alcohol-based mouthwash because it's quite easy to get. And then you water it down so it's not really intense, just like Listerine or something. And then every 2 hours use that because, when you swim in salt water for a long period of time, your mouth goes a bit gross and your tongue starts to get really thick. It's like, well, it's that, but over 12 hours worth. It gets pretty bad. So, that's the whole idea with using that. And I ended up getting some mouthwash to then use to help with my ulcers as I went along, which stung like hell and it was really painful, but that helped them slowly go away. But that meant that every time I stopped to rest, I had some like pasta and some good food to eat, but I wasn't able to eat it because I couldn't chew it properly because it was quite painful. So I ended up just having like a protein drink and some watermelon. But I was able to still eat all of the food that I needed to when I was going. It was just kind of more of that recovery food that I just couldn't eat. I just couldn't tolerate. So that was an issue. And then the other one was on the run after, I can't remember how long it was. It was because I started running at night. So I was into the next night. I was having trouble swallowing salt tablets because I'd been in the desert for so long on the bike and then the run. My throat had got really torn up from just inhaling dust constantly. So I was still able to eat and drink. It was just I couldn't swallow tablets. So what I did was I had my crew open the little capsules and tip them into my electrolyte drinks, and that's the way I had salt instead. So it was like problem, okay, how do we find a solution? But those were my big issues, which all things considering, I think that is amazing that I feel like I kind of got off scot-free, like no blisters, like only a tiny little bit of chafing, like nothing significant. Yeah, so I was absolutely amazed by that.
That is good. I mean, because from where I sat behind my phone looking at you on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, you looked happy, you looked fine. I didn't see any, major like road rashes or anything. So, but I know what it's like, when people are watching you, they don't see the exertion and like necessarily the chafing or the injuries or pulls or strains and all that stuff. So I didn't know. That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, did I ever tell you about the time I went to a popular cycling studio and it was super bizarre? I was dressed like regular scumbag trainer clothes and everyone else had on, matching Lululemon, full face of makeup. And the instructor kept yelling, "Ladies, let's dance," which I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like,
that's so weird.
Let's dance. Are we riding? Anyway, that all happened because I was trying to maintain cycling fitness during the winter.
Yeah, winter months are tough. Days are shorter. It's cold. It's rainy. Takes a lot of extra time to gear up, and a lot of those rides are going to get canceled anyways because it's going to be too dangerous outside. Anyways, I spent a lot of my time indoors training, even during the summer months, just because I got small kids and I want to get this training done early. I also love group classes, but I spend majority of my time training alone in my garage. That can be pretty boring. So we have a way for our listeners to make that training during the off season or during the winter months or whenever you want really exciting. CycleCast app provides studio quality classes for both indoor cycling and running.
Awesome. Who needs to see a bunch of other weirdos on spin bikes anyways? We need an instructor who has an ear for music that will get us hammering those pedals and a ride plan that keeps us engaged during long trainer sessions.
Yes, I finally tried it, and it's exactly what I got from CycleCast. So they use music through your phone in this app, which works for Android. It works for iOS, so it doesn't matter what kind of phone you have. It uses minimal data, minimal battery power, and it's your phone. You bring it everywhere you go. So you got classes from different instructors at different lengths. It doesn't matter what time of day or night you're doing it. You can do it all on your own schedule.
That's awesome. Plus, the running programs are both indoor and outdoor, which is huge for me as I train for Trans Rockies this year. I'm doing a combination of treadmill and trail, and the treadmill is about as exciting as the trainer. So this is definitely helping me make those sessions more engaging. And as our gift to Age Groupies listeners, we have an awesome promo. Go to cyclecast.com/activate and enter the code GROUPIES to get a 30-day free trial on top of the regular 7-day free trial. That's like 5 weeks of free stuff, y'all. That's cyclecast.com/activate, CYCLECAST. Don't forget to use the promo code GROUPIES, GROUPIES. CycleCast. You're going to love where this app takes you.
Well, take us through it. Take us through it from when you launched the boat out. Where did you guys leave from? And did you? And you let's I guess back up one more thing.
Yeah.
There were 3 of you guys who did this?
Yes. Yeah. So it was myself and 2 other guys who did it. I was the only female. I'm the only female who's ever lined up to start and then completed it. So
making world history.
Yeah. I'm pretty proud of that one. So it was 3 of us. We didn't have a start time that everybody had to start, but we had a date that everybody was starting on. So we started on the 9th of October. And we're all just kind of, because we are swimming with boat captains and ultimately it's their decision on when we start. I put complete faith in that. And I've, swum with a boat before and I'm well aware that, whatever the captain says goes, like that's the rules of marathon swimming and things like this. So we started from a little beach called Doctor's Cove, which is apparently where all the swimmers start from. And we start at nighttime because that's the best period of time for the tides as well. Although my boat captain was saying that he checked the tides and the tides were high tide was about 8 p.m. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I probably would have started earlier if I'd factored that in and, did a bit more thinking around that. But, whatever, hindsight. So I started at just after 10 p.m., jumped in the water. And then, so I made it as an official start. So I swam over to the cove with my kayaker and then got out of the water, which is how you start a marathon swim, and then got back in, even though it wasn't an official swim because I was wearing a wetsuit and, held onto the kayak when I drank and ate and whatever. But, I kind of wanted to, make it as official as possible in my mind.
That's cool. Yeah. So you touched me in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you swim from beach to beach. So that was pretty cool. And so I just started swimming, and the tide was amazing. For the first about 20 Ks, I hardly had to swim really with any effort. Like it was just felt like I was being pushed along by the water. It was really, really cool. It was really quite easy. And then at about 20 K onwards, then it was a lot choppier. It was a lot rougher. And there was a lot, kind of had to, do a fair bit more work to actually continue on and keep moving. One thing that we had forgotten to do is we got a bunch of thermoses, so, things for hot water, because I'm well aware that I haven't done a lot of cold water training and I didn't know how I was going to go in the cold water, but we left them all back at the house. So I had no warm water to drink because, hot drinks or anything. And so I started to feel cold within about an hour, and I was like, oh God, this is not good. And so I said to my kayak, and I was like, do we have anything? And he's like, I don't know, because I had 2 crew on the boat, and they were managing all of my food and everything. They'd, pass it to my kayaker and he'd give it to me, because I much prefer to feed off a kayak than a boat. I'm comfortable with that. I've done that a bunch of times before. So what they ended up doing is there was a microwave on the boat. So they just put a water bottle or something in the microwave, heat up the water, and then give it to me so I could tip it down my wetsuit. And so that helped for a little bit. But then I was like, I'm still cold. So I had taken extra swim caps. So I just put 2 swim caps on instead, and that really helped, because I always find if my head's warm, then I'm okay, because that's where you lose majority of the heat, your body heat from. So and then every so often I just get some more warm water to tip down my wetsuit and keep going. So I felt like we kind of managed that pretty well early on, because I spoke to a guy, the La Jolla swim that I did, and he has done kayak assist for a lot of swimmers. And he said, if you start feeling cold at all, get onto it early, because, that's something that's going to be an issue. Yeah. And, if you get hypothermia, it's going to stop your swim. So, you have to get onto it as soon as you start feeling any cold at all. And as it was, I kind of ignored it for a little bit. I'm like, no, I'll be fine. I'm like, no, don't be an idiot. Like, let's do something about this. So that was,
one thing if you're only swimming a couple miles, but I guess you factor into you're doing a lot further than that. Is it 22 miles? Is that how it adds up?
I think about 20 something miles. Yeah. That's a long way.
That's a long way.
Yeah. So, that was fine. I felt a bit sick and was vomiting basically every time I fed for about 5-6 hours, so about half of the swim, because my stomach just got really bloated. I couldn't pee, and I was just feeling horrible for a while. But I was like, well, as long as I can still get something in, it's better than nothing. So when I'm vomiting, I never stop eating entirely. I always try something, because I know that even if it just absorbs in my mouth or, tiny little bit gets in my stomach, it's better. Yeah, it's better than nothing. And I know that I need the extra energy to continue on. So I kept trying that. And then after a while, I finally felt better. And then I was like, it was such a relief to actually, not have something and then vomit it straight back up again. I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just keep swimming. So
how many hours total did it take you to do the swim?
Just under 12 hours. It was 11 hours 54, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was
you start to lose track of time or where you are, or just kind of zone out. I mean, I don't think I've ever swam anything nearly that long.
Always, like, I never know where I am, because when I'm swimming that far, you look up, and if it's choppy, you just see water, or you might see the land in the distance. Like when I started, I could see a bunch of lights that I was swimming towards, but I have no gauge of how far that is. I have no sense of the distance that I have to go. And the people on the boat, the boat guys, as lovely as they were telling me nautical miles. And I was like, I don't understand. I'm like, is that longer or shorter? You said I'm halfway. I've done 6 nautical miles. I didn't. And I was like, no, I don't. So, yes, now I know that they are shorter than normal miles. But, so, or longer. Yeah, the calculation's different, because it's like, oh, 17 miles. And I'm like, but no, anyway. So that was confusing. But things like that occupy my mind for a while, because then I like go over it. I'm like, hang on, that's confusing. I don't understand. And then I just get preoccupied with trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So that's not always a bad thing. For me, I found like at about 3 o'clock in the morning, which I mean, when I used to work night shift is always around 3, 4 o'clock in the mornings when I get my really sleepy time. So at that time I was like, oh, I really need the sun to come up, because I know as soon as the sun comes up, I start to feel a bit more energized and I feel a bit better. So I found that was a bit tough. And to be honest, like the worst part of the swim was the last couple of hours, because the guy I spoke to who'd done a bunch of kayaking, he had said to me, in the last quarter of your swim, don't look to the shore. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because you can't just necessarily judge distance or whatever. And so I was, of course I looked up and I was like, oh, yeah, we're not too far away. And, I kind of looked and went, oh, yeah, maybe about an hour. And my kayaker was like, oh, you've probably only got a couple of feeds left. You'll get there reasonably all right. And it ended up being 2 hours, because the shore is just so deceptive on actually being able to get through. Like I wasn't slowing up my pace at all. It just looks closer than what it is. And towards the end, I was like, this is ridiculous. So
it's
very
like
happy.
you thought you were supposed to be done, and then after that, it just gets more agonizing being out there.
Yeah. Then after a while, you're just like, towards the end of anything, you kind of sometimes you get a bit sick of it, and you're just like, I just want to be done with this. I just want to move on.
God,
to the next thing.
I can imagine. That's 12 hours of swimming.
Yeah. I mean, some of the other swim splits have. One of the guys did 17 hours, and I'm like, oh, hats off to him for continuing on, because that's, to me, that sounds like torture.
Good Lord, that's
swim for another 5 hours. Yeah. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with him. Like that's pretty awesome that he kept going.
No kidding.
So yeah. And then
do you have anything touch your legs or touch your body as you're swimming? Any wildlife come by?
Like towards the end, there was a bunch of seaweed, but I swam there the day before, so I knew that, and so I knew to expect that. But in the middle of the night, I had these weird, and I still don't know what they are. I really need to find out. These they were kind of little rectangle shaped things, and they were white. And someone said they were little like salt crust things, or someone else said they're like little calamari. I've no idea what they were. But there was absolutely hundreds of them, and I just swam through them for a couple of hours. And every so often, one would hit me in the face. I'd be like, oh.
Any of that freak you out?
Yeah, I did. I did a few times. But then I kind of got used to it after a couple of times. I was like, okay, I know what it is. And majority of the time I would swim through them, and sometimes I'd touch them with my hand. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, and I know where you are. But when they hit my face, because I wouldn't see them coming, then they give me a little jolt. But apart from that, like there was no sharks. I didn't see any dolphins, which is disappointing. I love dolphins, but yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm okay not seeing them. Like there was hardly anything out there. I swam through a few schools of fish, which was pretty fun. But yeah, majority of it was pretty tame.
Yeah, I think the big concern a lot of people have just in the idea of open water swimming in the ocean is sharks.
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me about that all the time, even for the short swims I do in the ocean.
Yeah.
Did the thought cross your mind at any point that sharks could be out there or were out there?
Oh, do you know what? I know that sharks are out there because I'm swimming in their home. So like the reality is I would have swum with sharks, but I know that sharks don't like disturbed water. So if there's ever a boat around, generally they stay away because they don't like that. And like, unless they're curious, then they'll stay away. And I said to the boat captain beforehand, I said, look, this isn't an official swim. If you see a shark, just pull me out of the water. I'll wait till it goes away and then I'll get back in. And he just laughed at me. He's like, dude, I've been doing this for years and I've never seen a shark. Or I might have seen a shark like 4 times or something. It was something, it is, he would have done hundreds of crossings and he was just laughing at me. He's like, it's fine. I mean, when I did the 20K swim, there was a shark and it was, I think I was probably about 2Ks away from where it was, and they pulled all the swimmers out of the water. And then after a while, they're like, ended up getting back in and finishing the swim. So I just, I don't think about sharks that much. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, they're here, but they'll be fine. They'll stay away from me. I just have friends that they'll leave me alone. So
you finished like mid-morning then? Is that about right?
10 a.m. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had like 4 hours or so of sunlight?
Yeah. The sun came up. Yeah, probably about 5:36. Yeah.
What's it feel like to finally climb on land after that?
Oh, so good. It was so nice. It was interesting because I wasn't sure how I'd be. Like, I wasn't sure if my head would still kind of have that woozy feeling that sometimes you have after being in the ocean for a long time or being on a boat, just the sea legs thing. But I felt fine. Like, mentally, I was really good. Like, my husband actually said to me he was really surprised on how cognitively intact that I was. Like, I wasn't, kind of out of or anything. Like, they were – because where you land on the beach, there's all these really big rocks. So you have to be really careful getting out of the water and navigating that. And I said to them as they were helping me out, I said, just hold on. Like, I've been lying down for 12 hours. Just let's go slowly. And they're like, yeah, no worries. That's fine. So, I ended up getting out. And then they've got these really big chairs because it's a public beach. So I just went and sat on that for a couple of minutes, and there was all these people because it's at the bottom of a resort, and they were all standing around going, oh, so where have you swum from? What have you done? And, what are you doing now? And, just asking all these questions. That was so lovely. And they're like, whoa, oh my God, that's amazing. So
yeah, imagine a lot of people with wide eyes going, what?
Yeah. Yeah, because like the Catalina swim finishes on a few different beaches, and that's one of them. So most people have seen like some of the Catalina swimmers finish, but then I was saying, oh well, I'm actually doing this as well now, and they're like, oh, okay.
This is the short part.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, this is this is the start. Yeah.
Does the bike start right there?
Yeah, so I walk it's a little bit of a walk up to the car park, and then you start the bike from there. So what I'd always planned to have a bit of a rest out of the swim because I didn't know how it was going to be, but I didn't want to sleep for too long because I wanted to still get on the bike and get out of LA before the traffic was really bad as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan was always, and we stuck to it, to go to the RV, which I had as my main support crew vehicle because it meant I had a bed to sleep on. They had a stove to cook if they needed. I had a whole bunch of changes of clothes. Like there was so much room for everything that we needed, and a toilet and all those things. So I lay down and had a sleep for a couple of hours, and then I got up and I was on the bike by, I think it was about 1:30 in the afternoon roughly. So I didn't stop for too long, but I definitely wanted to have a bit of a rest between legs. So it was a long transition for me.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's kind of like the spirit of these things. It's not a quick T1. People aren't rushing, doing all that stuff. This is a different mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those things because it's not an official race. So you time it and you have splits and they go on a website, but it's not, an official race. So I kept saying at the start, my crew was, kind of in that race mode, go do things really quickly. And I just said, no, it's okay. It's not a race. We have time. There's no cutoffs to this. And they're like, oh, and then everyone just kind of relaxed and chilled. So that was really good too.
Huh, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't ever have that you have to race. I wanted to get through as quick as I could, and I had my own goals, but I wasn't racing. Mentally I didn't have that racing mindset anyway.
You change over after a few hours, get on your bike, and then the route takes you inland? Yeah,
up north first, and then we went inland. So I went up north through along the coast, so Santa Monica area, Miami.
Oh,
yeah, it was beautiful on the beach. Oh, it was amazing. I rode through some absolutely amazing areas, and then we turned inland. It was funny, Dan, the guy who came up with this, he was talking to my crew. It's like, oh, so you've been through this beach, have you been through here? And they're just like, I don't know. We've been following a map. We don't know what all the areas called that we've been through. I would not be able to tell you where I've been. I know, I stopped at Palos Verdes, which is where the swim started, and I know that I got through to Death Valley to Badwater Basin. I got to Mount Whitney. Anything in between, I was like, I know little bits of the run, but that's kind of it. I'm like, there was this one bit where I was riding through a canyon, and that was pretty cool, but asked me to tell you where it was, no idea.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah. That's an interesting point. What was it like to get on the bike after being in the water for so long?
Yeah, it's really good.
Was it a regular start or just it felt good?
Yeah, no, it felt really good. Yeah, it was interesting because I just need to chill. In my mind, the race, Uberman, the event, whatever you want to call it, was split up into two. So the swim and the bike was the first half, and then the run was the second half. So my plan was always to take the bike as easy as possible, but get through as well as I could, but not push it, be super chill, super relaxed, really low heart rate, because I needed to have as fresh legs as possible for the run. So, I kept my heart rate at 120, 130 majority of the time. And then if there was little climbs, I'd get it maybe got to like 140. And then there was the last big climb, which is the first climb on the run. I think it got up to like mid 150 max. So yeah, I was, you know, if I was ever kind of creeping up my heart rate, I'd just slow down. I just back off the pace. I was just really, really conservative the whole time. So I felt really good for majority of the bike. Like I felt, I like had lots of energy. I was having lots of fun. Like I was well aware of riding through all of the traffic. And there was a couple of times where I was like kind of freaking out, just going, oh my God, there is all these cars around. They're really close and I don't really know where I'm going. But thankfully my crew were always really, really close and there wasn't too much traffic that they got stuck. So that was helpful. And once I'm out of the city on country roads, then I feel much, much safer. Then at nighttime, because we also had a car from my friend who'd driven down from Canada. And so on the first night, he had his car with him because we had like other friend who was able to like drop my crew to go for a sleep and then drove them out to come and meet us the next day. And then they switched over because I had like a day and a night crew. I had, you know, separate shifts. So I was able to have him direct follow at nighttime on the ride as well. So yeah, kind of anytime that I felt a little bit like, oh, this is not great, I was like, okay, so how do we fix this? All right, get a car behind me, traffic lights, with headlights, and then, you know, if other cars are around, then they know to be mindful. And yeah, you know, I had a high vis vest on and, you know, rear light, but I mean that only does so much. The person's not paying attention. Yeah.
Is that weird that knowing that you're continuing and your support crew is, you know, taking shifts to sleep and you know, get their energy back to come support you?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of was, but at the same time, like that's what they do at RAM. And so that's what I modeled my crew shifts off as well. I was like, well, RAM goes for 12 days and they have day night crew. Like I'm not planning on going for 12 days, but you know, I still am well aware of crew fatigue. And I also learned that at Epic 5 as well. Like after day 3, they say you must rest at least one of your crew members, like, you know, off the route. So that's what I looked at. I'm like, well, I don't want somebody who's potentially falling asleep behind the wheel driving behind me.
Oh God,
so yeah, exactly. And I'm like, safety is always my number one. Like that's, you know, if anything was not safe, I'd be like, nah, that's not okay. So I was very, very mindful of these things as well. So that's why I initially had 6 core people and then a couple other people kind of swapped in and out as they went. But that was why, purely for safety, for fatigue, for them.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I guess if you're outside and you're working out and your heart rate is higher probably than theirs, then it's probably easier to stay awake.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point, at least.
Yeah.
So how far into the bike did you take a rest or sleep for the first time?
So it was about 150 Ks in. It was about 9 o'clock at night. I had a first stop. So I was feeling tired. I was like, okay, I'll try and sleep. I wasn't able to, but it was really nice just to lie down on the bed, have something to eat for about an hour. I think I stopped. And then I got back on the bike and kept going. And I said to my crew, I said, oh, you know, what would be really cool would be to get 200 Ks in tonight before then I have a proper sleep. Because the plan was always, you know, to sleep, if I was going to have a proper sleep, around early hours in the morning and then get up when it's sunrise or get up, you know, when the sun's up. So then again, you can kind of trick your body into thinking it's had a little bit more sleep than what it actually has. So,
so
I ended up getting... I was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning. I ended up stopping again. And by that time, because my crew had been going since, you know, in the morning, they'd been then going all day and then through the night because it was just a little tricky with the swim to swap over crew. So they were exhausted by that point. And my husband said to me, he's like, look, you know, we're going to find somewhere on the side of the road to pull over. So wherever that is in the next 5 Ks, you can stop. And I was like, yeah, totally fine. You know, we had a mutual understanding really with myself and all the crew that if they felt, you know, that I needed to stop for whatever reason, or, you know, if they're saying to me, look, we just need to stop and you're, you know, getting pretty tired as well, then, you know, that's fine. You know, I understand that. So yeah, it was probably about 4 a.m. that I stopped again, and I was just a couple of K short of 200. And Michael says to me, he's like, how far are you done? I'm like, that's enough. It's fine. Don't care. I'm like, I'm done. Because I was climbing at that point and I was like, nah, it's fine. I'm more than happy to stop here. So that was good. And I got a couple of hours sleep, and they were able to sleep at the same time as well as me because there was space in the RV for them to sleep. And then unfortunately during the night where I was riding, I rode away from it, but there was a really big fire on one of the hills. And so that meant that when my other crew had gone back to our accommodation, then tried to drive through, all the roads were blocked, and then, you know, they were fine to get on the roads that they needed to, but that meant that having an interstate blocked, that all the other people were on the same road. So they didn't end up catching up with the guys until I think it was about like 11 o'clock in the morning. So they were done. They were more than happy to change over at that point. And to me, I'm like, well, that justifies my reasoning for having two sets of crew because they were wrecked.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, did you factor in the I don't know, I guess we call it fire season out here now in California in the fall.
Didn't really think about it.
But
I mean, yeah. Like, I guess it's kind of, you know, you've got this route, that's where you go, you know, that's what happens. And if I get diverted off that, then that's fine, you know, whatever, you do what you can. But because for me, fire season is summer in Australia. So I didn't really think that, you know, about fire season with you guys. And we're actually really lucky because by the time we left California at the end of our trip, and that was like a couple of weeks later, then everything was on fire. So where we actually went, then the fires were through. So it was devastating to hear that all these places were on fire, but we were, quite lucky that we didn't get affected by it. Because there was another fire later on the run. There was a car that the trailer caught on fire and then engulfed the car as well. So I was like, this whole trip was just was marked by different fires as it went along. And then I went and did a podcast with Rich Roll. And on the way there, Michael and I were looking out our windscreen just going, there's a fire like a couple of ridges over. We're like, I hope that's not anywhere near where we're going. But they're like, no, it's fine.
Really.
It's far away. I was like, Jesus, what's going on? What is with this? Yeah.
A lot of things burning out here in the fall, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I guess even without a fire, I mean, still, one of these sport vehicles could get a flat tire or, you know, radiator could bust. So having a backup for that obviously was really smart.
Yeah.
So then you said you got one flat tire during the bike, and that was the only issue?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the only mechanical issue that I had the whole time, which is amazing because I've had multiple flat tires before. I've had a whole bunch of other problems with bikes, but this time, they were really, really good, thankfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. So were you on your TT bike most of the time and then switched over to the road?
I was actually on my road bike most of the time, which surprised me because I thought it'd be the other way around. But I started on my road bike because I much prefer that riding through a lot of traffic. I just find it's much easier to be able to navigate around cars. Yeah. And then I just stayed on it. And then I think it was on... the days are all one big day. It's hard. So I think it was like the next day there was a long flat section and I was just getting a bit stiff in my back, and I said to my crew, I was like, I just want to get on my TT bike. I just need to stretch out for a bit. And so that was really good. And then anytime I was climbing, I'd get straight back onto my road bike. I mean, they've both got climbing gears on them, but I was like, I don't want to make this any harder for myself than what it needs to be. So that's why I mostly stayed on my road bike. And then the flat tire ended up being on my TT bike. So, that was fine. Just swapped it out, then back on it.
So during the swim, you have nautical miles to ponder over what that actually means.
Yes.
What about the bike, which is a lot longer? Where's your mind going?
Majority of the time, I'm doing a lot of body scans a lot of the time. That's always my focus on like how am I feeling? You know, what's going on? You know, is there anything hurting, anything off? You know, anything like that. And majority of the time I was like, no, feel good. And I guess because I haven't been any of the places that we were going, I was just able to look around and really appreciate and enjoy the scenery. I really,
That's cool.
really
That's
enjoyed
really
that.
Cool.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I mean, like the desert in Australia is flat red dirt with some, you know, trees and things. Whereas the desert over here, like you've got these still big cliff faces and mountains and things. So it was very, very different to what I've seen before. So that's just fascinating. And I love like seeing all the different colors and all the rocks and all of that. So, you know, I always find that if I'm, you know, having a bit of a bad patch, whatever, I'll just look around and be like, oh, this is amazing. Like I'm so, so grateful to be here and, you know, to be in this space doing this thing. I mean, I think about food a lot.
Yeah.
pretty standard.
What food in particular are you thinking about?
Do you know what? I was thinking about you because after our last conversation, I was thinking about my Vegemite sandwiches and how I couldn't eat them because of my ulcers on my tongue. They just burned. So I was feeling very let down by Vegemite and by my mouth. I always find when the weather's a bit warmer, I can eat easier things to process, like sandwiches and like kind of little light bars and things like that. But at night time, then I can eat heavier foods like Cliff Bars and kind of other things like that. So it's just about, kind of getting a bit of variety in that, making sure I'm drinking enough. Yeah. Things like that. It wasn't any kind of one particular food, but it was so funny. Because I had 3 American girls crewing for me, and they were getting used to my Australianisms and so speaking Ranger and things like that. Different things I'd say to them. They're like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, hang on, I'm gonna translate that. Yeah. So that was fun. Like just random things like that, and then I said to them beforehand, I said, because it was almost Halloween and there was lots of costume shops and everything. I said, if you can, go and get some costumes. Let's make this fun. This is going to be a bit of an adventure. So the first costume that I saw was a hot dog costume that my husband was wearing, and I just laughed and laughed. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my
awesome.
life. Yeah. So, there was just entertainment as well from them. They were just crazy the whole time. It was awesome. Yeah, it was fun.
You get off the bike, and that's at the start of where the Badwater, what's the Badwater 135 starts?
Yeah.
Well, how hot is it when you're starting the run?
It wasn't as hot as what it does get for the Badwater run. It was probably about mid to high 30s Celsius. I don't know Fahrenheit. I think, or maybe in the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of translates to. Yeah, so it wasn't ridiculous, but it was still hot. I mean, I finished the ride at a kind of late afternoon. I think it was about 4:30 at night in the afternoon. And so then I went and had a sleep because I was pretty wrecked by that point. I was pretty tired. And towards the end of the ride, I was like, I just want to finish this before the sun sets. And so I managed to pull into the car park, and there was, a bunch of tourists around because it's a really, really interesting tourist place. And one of the guys offered me a beer, and I was like, oh, no, good thanks. Maybe later. I'm not quite yet.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny. And so I started the run probably about 9:30. So I ended up running the first part. So I kind of broke it up into sections on the run. So the first bit was I ran to the Oasis Hotel area. I think it was probably about 20k. And then we pulled the RV into the parking lot there. And a lot of the time was basically just parking lots. We kind of stealth in and then sleep for a couple of hours and then get out early in the morning. So we never really had any people going, what are you doing? Except for when we're
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we were, not technically a race. So we didn't have any, there was no permits or anything for the race. So
yeah, there's no fanfare. There's no, big inflatable blow ups and booming bass and Mike Riley's not calling people through.
No, that was not. So it was really, really low key. So with just kind of sneaking in and out in the middle of the night. So that was fine. So I had a couple of hours sleep then, and then ran through from the Oasis area to Stovepipe Wells. So that was probably the hottest part of the run that I had to do, because I was coming through to there around the middle of the day, and that was pretty tough because I was really fatigued. And I've got a lot of really good strategies to be able to manage the heat, but I know the more fatigued I get, the less effective they are, and the less that my mental coping abilities are able to do. So that was a bit tough, but yeah, I got through to there. And then we didn't start the next part of the run because we were trying to avoid the heat of the day was the main objective with that, because we didn't want, I think it was probably maybe about 2 to 5 p.m. I definitely wanted to be out of the sun, because that was just going to melt me. So there was no point, and I just would have dug myself into a massive hole if I tried to continue on through that part of the day. So yeah, we ended up doing that. And then so I started the first climb at night, and so then I got up and over the first climb and then down the other side, and then I can never remember the little town that we came into. It's not Lone Pine, it's the other one in between. I think it's Furnace Creek, where we stopped there again and then, got up in the morning and then, so kind of like did it in chunks because the run ended up taking me, I think it was 64 hours. So, like two and a half days.
Lord.
Yeah. So I did a decent amount of running at night time. I mean, when I say running, I mean run walking. I think I probably walked, maybe about like half of it or something because I definitely walked all the hills and, just took it really, really easy and tried to conserve as much energy as I could. Yeah. But no, it was really good. It was really enjoyable. The only other part was the extreme cold that we had when we were coming into Lone Pine. It was probably about like 2-3 degrees through that section. And
that gets cold. That's because you're starting to get up to elevation in the mountains, right?
Yeah. Because that's the last town that you go to before you start the ascent up to Mount Whitney. And so I was actually running a lot more than I had run previously in that particular leg just because it was so cold. I was trying to keep myself warm. I just wanted to stop. And I was like, you got to get to Lone Pine. I was like, okay. So, I just had to keep pushing through there. But
well, that's another thing about the race that I didn't think about that makes it so tough, I'm thinking, because it's not just one temperature range you're dealing with. You're going from cold in the water to, how was it on the bike? Temperate? Okay.
The bike was okay. I deliberately took a long sleeve jersey because just in case I needed it, which I ended up wearing at nighttime, and a vest, and I had some arm warmers. I had a whole bunch of different things. And my friend also who drove down with his car, drove down from Canada, like he brought a few extra layers as well just in case. I mean, I'm always the person in a group ride who is wearing the least amount of clothes. Like I'm not someone who feels the cold when I'm exercising. A lot. So I don't really need multiple layers, but I definitely did have a few things. And I ended up using my bike jersey on the run because I just needed some extra layers and my vest, and had a puffy jacket at one stage and things like that just because it was so cold. And again, because, I'm so tired, like my body's shivering a lot more than what it normally is and it can't regulate temperature as well as it normally can as well.
Right. So, and just the run alone is the extreme temperature differences.
Yeah.
So was there a certain point in the run where you knew, okay, I'm going to finish this thing, like it became a reality, or was that just always the case throughout the race that you knew you were going to finish?
That was always the case. I never think about quitting. My thing is always about, how can I get through this? And whatever issues come up, I'll just problem solve along the way, which is what we had to do, which is what I did. And I find that having 5 years ultra racing experience really paid off for this race. I felt like we planned for 98% of every scenario that we came up against, we had an answer to. And the ones that I hadn't experienced before, that I told you about before, like I was able to then go, okay, so how do I manage this situation? What do I do? What can I do? And just be able to think it through. Or, if I didn't have an answer, that I'd talk to my crew about it and say, well, what do you think? And they all had a lot of experience racing between them as well. So they were always able to help me. But I mean, majority of the time, especially on the bike, I'd stop and be like, right, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. This is what I need. And this is what I need you to do. Like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the way I've always been because, again, what you're saying before about having all this time to think, like if I come up with a problem, I have time to solve it before I get to my crew and say, I have this problem. So I've already got problem and solution, and then ask them to do whatever they need to do to help me get to that solution.
Yeah, the one advantage of going such extreme distances, you get time to work it out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I did know about the extreme weather temperature changes in Badwater because I have heard an interview with the race director before, and he said that that's one thing that always catches people off guard if they haven't done their research properly is how cold it gets, because everyone knows about the heat but they don't know about the cold. And I was like, right, remember that? Yeah, so that was good to know.
So what's the finish line like for this?
Yeah, so the finish line is at the trailhead of Mount Whitney. So you go to, just a little bit past where the Badwater run finishes. I've never done Badwater, so I didn't know where that was. And it was funny because I didn't know where the finish line was either. So I was like, okay, well, it's here somewhere. I'm like, I'm going to point it out when I get there because, again, like there's no big banner. There's no like announcer or anything. Dan, the guy, had to go back to LA, so he wasn't there to, point it out or anything. So it's this little sign, Mount Whitney Trail. And so the last like a couple of Ks. I had, because I always have a run pacer with me. I always have one of my crew with me, just for safety, for company, for, whatever reason. So by that stage there was probably about 4 of us all together. Because we're getting a bit of footage because we were filming a documentary at the same time. My other friend was just so excited. He's like, come running back down. He's like, oh, I want to be here, which was amazing. And so I actually had more people than my crew at the finish line. So I had some people who, because, there's lots of hikers there. There's, lots of bushwalkers and people around. And I had just all these random people as well as my crew, all standing there. And I saw where the finish line was, and my friend Man, who was with me, he's like, Mel, it's just over there. It's just over there. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Like, it's not a hurry. Like, I'm okay. I get it. I was like, I'm getting there. And so, I walked over there, and I've got this really big hammer thing, which, looks like it's something out of a movie from the Avengers, like a Thor hammer or something.
Yeah.
And that, you hold up and, you symbolize that you've finished the race. And so I had all these people like cheering and everything. And it was quite emotional. It was a really, really lovely moment. It was amazing. And then, once the cheering kind of died down, I had this person say, okay, so what have you just done? There's like,
yeah, right.
Like, I knew I had to be here because something was happening, but I don't know what it is. So that was lovely. And obviously this other guy had been speaking to my crew, and he's like, wow, she's just done this and swum from here and ridden it. And I was like, do you want to be my PA person? Like,
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So that was pretty amazing. And so then, there was lots of hugs and tears and just a bit of celebration with everybody. It was pretty amazing.
God, yeah. You're the first woman, and right now, the only woman who's ever done Uberman.
Yeah. And until next year, when hopefully there'll be another one.
But that is so cool. You get to be the first to ever have done this. Well, it's not a race, but this race.
Yeah. Race, not a race, adventure, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, on the first, which is just pretty amazing. I'm pretty proud of myself for doing it. Yeah.
How long did you plan for this? I mean, you didn't just sign up and say, oh, that looks like a neat race. This obviously was at least a year in the making.
Yeah, I can't remember when I found out about it, but I'm pretty sure it was like after Epic 5, I had thought about doing Ultraman Hawaii. And then it was before I'd gone to Ultraman Hawaii. So it was probably about a year and a half in advance, maybe 2 years. No, I was definitely talking about it before Rottnest. Yeah. It was probably about 2.5 years that I had thought about it, and then actually committed probably about a year and a half out, and spoke to Michael about it and said, what do you think? What do you think about doing this and doing this event? And, like sat down and had the adult conversations about finances and time off work and if it's actually going to work or not. So, yeah, I always plan my races far in advance. Like it's quite unusual for me not to have 1, 2, 3 years of racing in my mind at least mapped out, not necessarily like committed to, but just like, okay, in the next year I'll do this one, the next year I'll do this one, and then kind of on from there. So I always I have to, like, I need to be able to save money, save, my holidays, time, training, whatever. I have discussions with my coach, and she's like, what the hell? What are you doing now?
Right.
So she gets around.
How does one even approach like a coaching plan for something like this too? I think most of us are thinking.
Yeah. So, that's what my coach said to me at the time. She's like, I have no idea how to train you for that. And I'm like, that's okay, you'll figure it out. I'm like, I have faith. I'm like, that's not my problem. No, she was amazing. So my coach, Kate Bevilacqua, I spoke to her when I did the 20K swim, because it's over. I caught up with her because it's over near where she lives, and I spoke to her about this, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, all right, well, if you do it, I'll figure it out. And how she trained me for it was very, very different to any other events I've trained for before. So she told me that the focus of the training was to get used to being under fatigue. When you're training for any race that's this distance, you're going to be under a lot of load and a lot of fatigue. But it was about teaching your body how to back up day after day. So what she would do is she would have, it's kind of like periodization, but have a week of one particular sport and just overload it. So I do like 5-6 swims a week, and then, only a couple of runs, couple of rides or something. So like really back off the other disciplines.
I see.
And and there was a couple of times when I'd do a late night swim and then an early morning swim. So I'd swim and I'd be in the pool like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, which is very, very late compared to what I normally do. And then I'd be back again the next morning at like 5:30 in the morning, because again, I had to teach my body about how to continue and keep going. And,
wow. Huh.
Yeah. So things like that. And then, the same with the bike, like I'd be doing back-to-back days of, 8-9 hours of riding hills. I do mountain bike races on a Friday night. So I do that and then ride a long ride the next day if I had the day off, work. And then for the run, that was the main one that I always want to focus on, because it's not something that's a strength of mine. So I did 5 50K runs, 60K and then 100K. And so then the day before, or like the 50 and the 60s, I'd do a longer run. So I'd run maybe like 10, 15Ks or something, which is something I'd never do before a race. But again, it's about, getting your body used to load under fatigue. So that was
right, because these races are just part of your training.
Yeah.
To Uberman.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I know. Like a 100K race is a training race. It was so funny because one of my friends, when I was away in the States, she did a 100K race. She's like, that was my A race. And that is a training race. She's like, you're insane. I'm like, yes, I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, that had to lead to some weird interactions with people just to wrap their mind around. And this is like this 100K race they've been, training for, and that's their A race, probably the peak of their athletic career up to that point.
Yeah.
And for you, it's a stepping stone to something bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my biggest thing is no comparisons. Like because people always say that, it's like, oh, but it's nothing like what you do. I'm only just doing this, or, just doing that, whatever. I was like, no. You're not allowed to compare. Like no one's allowed to compare to what I do or to what other people do. You celebrate your achievements. You celebrate what you do. That's amazing. Like, I always feel like, and I very, very much believe it, that anyone can do what I do, but it's about having the motivation, the drive, the passion, and the time and life working ability to be able to do it, as long as you're, physically fit and healthy. But it's about, having all those things line up to be able to do it. Because I understand, like for me, I had to make sure that I didn't have any big life things happening this year as much as I can control, because I just don't have the time and energy to be able to dedicate to anything else. So that's one of my things. I was like, there's mums with young kids and things. I was like, well, of course you can't do what I'm doing. Like you have your family. Like I have my husband and 2 cats. Right. So, like
apples to oranges, trying to compare.
Totally. So I'm like, no, you're not allowed.
I like that too, because there's ways you can draw inspiration and motivation from seeing what people do who have gone further than you have personally. But then there's also that mental game where people say, well, that's so much better than, it's like a morality or like a value judgment of like, oh, that person's doing so much better than I am.
Yeah.
And they can put themselves down by those comparisons. I like your approach to that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
segueing,
keep going.
Segueing into, people who are not as experienced and have not done these long distances. How does someone get started? How does someone what are the things that have helped you to train, over the long haul, the things that you are doing consistently, the things that keep you healthy, the things that keep you motivated?
Yeah, I guess for me, when I'm picking a big race, I have 2 criteria that it needs to meet for me to want to do it. And that one, the first one is, does it excite me? And the second one, does it scare me? And I feel like once I've committed to doing something, once I've verbalized it, once I've started talking about it, then that provides a lot of motivation for the training. Because, if I'm so mentally stubborn that if I've committed to something, then I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes to get to that start line and get through it. So I feel like that's kind of something that I've built over time to do. And I love it. I love the long distance racing. There's just places that you have to go in your mind that you can't get any other way. And I relish that. I love getting to the point where you have to dig so mentally deep to keep pushing because you're in such a big hole that you're just like, nah, this is really, really hard right now. As I said, like, I don't ever think about quitting, but I mean, there was one point on the bike when it was really I was starting to mentally struggle, and I was like, all right, this is what you came for. This is what you wanted. You wanted a battle. So let's just go. Let's just go for it. So I guess for other people, I mean, I feel like the formula is the same no matter what distance that you're wanting to train for, is, having a goal and making yourself accountable to that goal, and whatever way that is. I mean, I do a lot of training by myself, and I find that I don't have issues being self-motivated. But I mean, if other people have, a lot of trouble trying to get themselves out of bed, then, having somebody else commit to doing it with you, or, you have a dog that you have to walk every day or run with, or, whatever, however that works. Yeah, exactly. And I guess for me as well, like, having a coach is really, really helpful, because I get a lot of motivation through that, because I look at it and I'm like, well, you've taken your time to set me this program, putting all this time and effort, all this energy into it. I am paying you for this service, but I feel that I then have a duty and a responsibility to do that as well, to, commit to that training and to get it done, basically.
Right. You both have a stake in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess for me as well, I do such big races that I know if I don't do my training, I won't go through the events, and my body won't handle the big event because I haven't done the big miles to get to the big event. So I kind of don't really give myself an option not to do it unless I'm sick, unless I'm injured. And the way that I stay healthy and I stay fit and things is I get a lot of treatment. Every month I have, alternate weeks on who I'm seeing, but I get a massage, I go to my osteo, go to my physio, and they keep me intact as well. So like any little niggles, anything that's going on, then I'm always onto it early as well.
Oh, I'm a believer in that too. That is huge.
So good. Like I know that my body would fall apart without that regular maintenance that I get. I mean, there's only so much stretching and exercises that you can do. Like, you need a professional to, kind of straighten out your body in whatever way it needs. I did make a couple of mistakes in my training this time, and I got sick a couple of times because I was probably pushing a bit too much into a bit of a hole, a bit of a fatigue hole. So yeah, but I mean, I always try and get onto things early, unless it just like completely wipes me out as this time it did. But yeah, like I always feel like I have to have permission from my coach to take a day off. And so, I'm like, okay, so this is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. She's like, nah, rest. And I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, I know the answer, but I kind of need her then to say, no, it's okay to stop. And I think that's one of my biggest downfalls, is that I don't know when to stop, because I will just push through anything. I'm like,
well, it seems like the fine line. Someone who's not going to push through things isn't going to be doing these, these ultra distances.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's got to be a tightrope there. Are there certain distractions or things in your life that you decided to remove from your life to be able to have the time and the focus for an event like this, or for the training?
I think one of the biggest things that I do is I don't lie in bed at nighttime on my phone. So once I go to bed, the phone, like, it's next to me on the bedside, but I don't look at it, because in my mind that is taking away from sleep, because I fall asleep really quickly. So if I am lying there on my phone for half an hour, then that's, an hour of sleep that I haven't got, which I would need. And I guess for me, the other things that I really do as a discipline is I don't let myself, come home from work and sit down on the couch and then get up and train, because then I have to make a decision. Okay, now you have to get up. I just get home straight away, get changed, get on the bike, run, swim, whatever I'm doing at that time. So for me, like, I don't really feel like I've had to cut out things in periods of time. I mean, I know that I don't see my friends as much as I really would like to. And I find that my friendship group kind of gets reduced down to my cycling friends or my running friends, or, training buddies for a period of time when it's really heavy training load. And it's, I'll come join you for 3 hours and then you can keep running for another 5. And I'm like, totally fine. Nice to see you for a while. So it's not really a conscious thing that I'm cutting out people, but it's more of a, you know, if I can fit a dinner in around my training, then that'd be amazing. But a lot of the time my friends are like, okay, now it's off season, now let's catch up. So they are very understanding, thankfully. They're really, really good bunch of people. Yeah, I guess again, it's not really a conscious thing, but I do, you know, sacrifice time with my husband, which is not great. And, you know, we do talk about that before a big race as well, before I start building up to anything, and to say, look, you know, this is what it's going to be like. You know, we have to really be mindful of, you know, when we are together, we are spending, you know, time together instead of, you know, sitting next to each other on the couch on our phones and like having conversations and things like that. So
a lot more intentional.
Yeah. So I think it's more just, you know, about being a lot more conscious about when I do have time, how I'm spending it, more than, you know, what am I cutting out of my life at that point in time.
Wow. Yeah. I think the very first thing, and we talked about last podcast, is when I asked if you'd flown out for Super Frog, and you just said, no, this is just a warm up. And not just the fact that you said it was a warm up, but the way you said it, I was like, oh, she's doing something really big. Let's figure out what this is.
Oh, that was the funniest. Yeah.
But I'm so happy to know I got to meet you there in San Diego, and just to see you succeed and just to absolutely crush it, become the first female, the first woman to conquer Uberman, and just inspire a lot of people. I know the people that I talked to in my circle here who got turned on to the race because they knew me and I knew you were just blown away and just drew a lot of inspiration. So thank you for just being who you are.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really, really cool. Like I have no idea how many people followed my race, and I will never know. So it's amazing when I hear stories like that about, you know, people being inspired. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it around with your circle too. That's awesome.
Well, yeah. And I think of, you know, the people I know who are starting an endurance career and just done, you know, like their first half marathon or their first 10K, and said, wow, and they get that light in their eyes and thinking, oh, I think I can do a little bit more. And like, what is this? So it's an exciting thing to see. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Any plans for anything next, or are you just taking some time off?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm still in my downtime. I'm going to start training again in a couple of weeks in early January. So yeah, I'm just needing a big mental refresh and physical time and everything. I do have an idea about what I want to do next, but I generally, I'm a bit reluctant to talk about it yet because I haven't financially committed to it. And that's kind of my line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, now I've entered, now I'll, you know, put it out there. So it's not going to be another ultra because I need a bit of time away from it. As much as I love them, I know that I need to just, you know, I've done them for 5 years almost consecutively. I had 1 year off. So I need to just have a bit more mental capacity to be able to do a few other exciting things that are hopefully going to come up. But it will be over multiple days because that's something that I love.
Yes.
But it won't be as long. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about what next year's going to be all about.
That's a good teaser and a good preview. So we're going to keep up with that. And
yeah.
I'll make sure everybody gets turned on to your Facebook, Instagram, all that.
Awesome.
And anything else that we can to look to? You said there's a documentary being filmed and coming out.
Yes. So there is a documentary. It is all a bit kind of up in the air at the moment. We're going to have a screening in Australia. My friends get sent to worldwide premiere, and I was like, "Oh, calm down." But anyway, I guess it is. So we're gonna have a screening sometime next year. It just depends on how quickly it can be all put together. That's out of my control completely. So yes, and then it'll be discussions about where it goes from there. So I am really like emotionally detached about the outcome of what it's going to be. I'm just so excited to have a documentary documenting my whole experience and my cruise experience through Uberman, and then wherever that ends up, it's going to be pretty cool. So I'm very, very pumped about that. I know I'm speaking so vague, but I really have no answers to those things.
That's the thing with film. You don't have the money, the editing, everything else.
Yeah.
So well, I will make sure I let all our audience know about that whenever it is something that people outside of Australia are able to see.
Yeah. You will eventually. It's just, how that's going to be, I don't know yet. So I'll let you know.
Very cool. Well, thank you for coming back on the show, and it's just fun to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, that concludes today's episode of the Age Groupies Podcast with me, Lindsay Hiken, and my co-host, Mike Ergo. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can follow the show on Instagram at Age Groupies, join our Age Groupies page on Facebook, and look us up by name, Lindsay Hiken and Mike Ergo on Strava. If you have questions, comments, or topic ideas, feel free to email us at agegroupies@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, as this really helps us get more exposure while we try to grow this little venture. And of course, if you have friends you think might like the show, please be sure to share it with them. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week.